All right, without further ado, let's start the talk. Obviously, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you to Millie and Content Folks for having me along to talk about something that I feel quite strongly about, and I'm sort of interested to know what everyone else is going to have to say about it. A bit about me. I'm one of those non-content design people that come along to speak at this. So obviously, thanks for having me along. I'm a service designer working in government. I work at the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. I've been working in government for almost 3 years now, but my background is in content, including 5 years at the mental health charity Mind, working in their information content team. And, I think it's worth saying that content design and service design are very close siblings. And I think service design is basically about helping people do what they need or want to do and making it as simple as possible for people to do that. So I also just want to share with you some advance notice. You might have seen this content warning in the talk description, I don't know, but just to recap, I am going to mention self-referral processes for fertility treatment and for counselling. I'm not going to go into detail about these topics, but I am going to mention them. So I didn't want to just suddenly talk about them without warning. And I'm just going to mention some of the processes involved in getting those treatments and how hard it can feel to start them. So what we're going to talk about today is the word just and the word simply. Now, in conversation, these words can seem apologetic or like you're asking permission. I just wondered if, just letting you know, and I think sometimes some of us may have noticed that we use these a lot in conversation as a way of softening things and as a way of seeming too apologetic. They can also be passive aggressive. I just wondered if, could you simply please? But what we're going to talk about today is the fact that in services, I think these words can be used in a different way. And what often happens is they're used to imply that things are quick, easy, trivial, or reasonable when they're not. Now, those words might not be a problem on their own, but they're usually a sign that other things are wrong. I'm sure there are examples out there of them being used in a totally reasonable way. I'm not aware of that many of them, hence the talk. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some examples, and then we're going to talk about some things that you can consider and think about and do if you find these words coming up in your content or if other people are trying to get you to use them. Now, it happens that the examples I'm going to show you are from transport and from health services. They just happen to be the things I've noticed. I'm sure that people are going to have other things to mention. And I will also just tell you that when I told my boss I was doing this talk, he said, "Oh yes, I've got a really annoying recipe book. There's a recipe in it that starts with just prepare a goose in the normal way." So when it comes to the examples, I do think it's just worth mentioning these are real examples. They were worked on by real people. So in the presentation and in the Q&A afterwards, let's just focus on how the content could be improved. And we're going to be kind and respectful about the people who've worked on these things, because we don't know what the content was like before. We don't know what battles they had to fight. We're going to talk as if they might be listening, because, for all we know, maybe they are. So the first example is from Trainline. Now, don't worry about trying to read the screenshot that's on the slide. I am going to read it out for you in a sec, but just to set a scene for you, it is freezing cold. I need to get home. Now, I've been to work and I need to get home from work. It happens that I need to be back at a particular time. I'm sure you can all think of lots of reasons why people get trained. Some of them are nice reasons, some of them are sad reasons. But generally, if you're getting a train, it's because you need to go somewhere. And my train had been cancelled. And I'd had a series of emails. I think I got an email to say that my train was disrupted, and then I got an email to say that it was cancelled, and I had about 4 different emails. But what we're going to look at is a bit of content that told me that I could get a refund because my train had been cancelled. So what this content says is, here's how to get a refund. No longer want to travel, we get it. You can cancel your journey now and receive a full refund for your ticket. Find your booking in the app or online, click Manage Booking, and then Refund Tickets. If you don't have an account, you can create one by following the link in your confirmation email. Just search your inbox for autoconfirm at info.thetrainline.com, and there's a button that says Sign In. Now, the tone of this email is quite relaxed. no longer want to travel. We get it. The experience was not. So the tone wasn't ideal, but I think the other main thing we want to observe about this email, first of all, is it's not actually targeted. It mixes information for two groups of people who do have an account and people who don't have one. So first of all, you've got to remember if you've got an account. Now, if you regularly book trains online, if you're confident doing things digitally, if you do lots of things with apps, maybe you've got an account. Or it might be the first time you've booked a train and maybe you didn't sign up for one. Not everyone is going to have an account. Some people will, some people won't. You need to remember which group you're in, and then you need to work out which bits of this email apply to you, because you can't just read the whole thing and follow it. So, first of all, there's a bit of what we call cognitive load, kind of mental juice, if you like, involved in just working out which bit of this email you need to read. And then it's got some instructions that you need to follow. Well, it's the evening, your train's been cancelled. Maybe you're reading that email on a phone, and often if you're using an email app on your phone, you can only read one email at a time. So now you've got to remember these instructions, or you've got to screenshot them. And then if you don't have an account, it says, just search your inbox for this email address. Well, if you want to search for an email address, you need to copy it. Now, if you copy an email on a mobile phone, there are actually lots of problems with this, depending on what app you're using and how it's set up. Sometimes it will insert the word mail to into the email address. And if you search for the email address with mail to on the beginning, it won't actually get the same search results as if you get it without. I tested this earlier and I found that if I copied the email address the way it came up on my phone, I couldn't find any emails from Trainline. So you've got to copy this email address or type it in, search your email inbox. It says search for your confirmation email. Actually, Trainline sends two emails when you book a ticket, and neither of them says to keep them. So you've got to find an email that you might not still have, identify this link and click on it. All of that, instead of just sending me a link to set up an account. Now, maybe it seems petty that I've spent about 5 minutes talking about this one paragraph, but that's a complex series of steps to just set up an account and get a refund. And if that's not physically or cognitively possible for me, maybe because I'm stressed or freezing, maybe because there are lots of reasons why that would be difficult for someone. There are permanent or temporary or transient reasons that it might be difficult for someone to do that. Maybe I just forget about it and I don't get my refund. And the problem that we've got is the content implies that it's easy. And you can't actually make something easy or simple just by saying that it is. It's not good for the customer and it's not good for the brand, because maybe next time I'll book with a different company that makes it easier for me to get a refund. It sort of feels almost like being nudged away, which I'm sure is not the intention at all. But the problem is the content seems relaxed. It's easy, but when you actually think about the steps involved, it's not. Now, our next example is also from the world of transport. And again, I'm going to read out what it is, what it says in the screenshot. This is from Eurostar. This is the Eurostar.com help center. My name has a hyphen. How should I enter it? Just use a space instead of the hyphen when setting up an account, making a booking, or logging in to manage a booking. Let's have a think about that for a second. This page exists because if your name has a hyphen and you're trying to enter it into a Eurostar page, it's not going to let you. It's not going to accept your name. And what this is basically saying is, your name is a problem. Just have a different name. Just change your name. And it's trying to fix a problem with content instead of acknowledging that there's a problem. And it feels dismissive. It feels disrespectful of, your name, your identity. That's quite an important thing. And if we think about it, there are some cultures that are more commonly have hyphenated names. There are people in blended families. And the tone, just use a space. I don't think that's the right way to put that. And I am guessing I've seen at least one comment pop up from someone who's got punctuation in their name that actually it's sort of implying that you're the problem rather than implying that the service is the problem. Also, as I mentioned, going to have a think about how this sort of happens in health services. So I'm not going to call out specific services like specific NHS trust or anything, because this is so common. So many health services say just contact us or simply self-refer. If you search online for those phrases, you'll see loads and loads of examples. Now, the process of contacting a health service or referring yourself can actually be really difficult. It can be a big step, it can be a complicated process, and saying just or simply doesn't reflect that at all. Now, some people might know what self-referral means, but I'm just going to quickly explain if you don't. There are some health services where you go and see a doctor and they will then do something to help you access the service. So they will fill in a form, contact a hospital and say, this patient needs this service, and you wait to be contacted or you wait to get something that allows you to book. Self-referral is where instead of going to see a doctor, your GP, you yourself can ask to use the service, and it might involve phoning up, it might involve filling a form in, but how you're going to feel about that depends on other things. You know, if you're very able, very confident to fill in forms, if you feel emotionally okay about it, maybe that's a positive thing for you that you don't have to go and see a doctor. But for some people, it means doing it alone without help. You know, and for some people, that actually is putting other barriers in their way. So saying just contact us or simply self refer doesn't really acknowledge how big of a deal that can be for somebody. Another thing you often say is simply call us on. Well, actually, making phone calls can be really hard or impossible. Lots and lots of people struggle with phone calls. And for some people, saying that you have to phone and not giving another option, it means they're not going to be able to use that service. Lots of people have anxiety or difficulty using a phone. Lots of other reasons why someone might not be able to call. Time. You need to be available to make a phone call during work hours. Or what if you are at work and you're not allowed your phone? What if you need to make a confidential phone call and you've got nowhere private to go, or you work night shift, or you might not have access to a phone? Making a phone call can be a big deal for lots of people, and this really doesn't acknowledge that at all. So just a reminder, we are now going to look at some examples from fertility and counselling services, but without going into detail about what they involve. So this is an example from a fertility clinic, and it says, you can simply self-refer using the form below, although a GP referral may be helpful, particularly if you have medical problems or a complex history. And the form says, please detail any useful information. And there was just a box that said useful information. Now, you can simply self-refer implies that it's going to be easy, that it's going to be simple. But actually, this form's asking you to think like a professional. It says, we need you to do all the work. I don't think the average person knows what constitutes a complex history. And the thing about self-referral is you don't have to go through a GP, but it also means that you're sitting in front of this form without somebody there to help you fill it in. And this kind of content potentially puts more barriers in your way by saying, well, you need to think like a professional, and we don't understand what this might be like for you. Again, here's an example from a counselling service. And it says, self-referral is a quick and simple way of accessing NHS talking therapies without going to see your GP. Fill in a referral form and we will contact you. This self-referral form is an easy way for you to access psychological support and advice. So some people might be aware that in some areas you can access talking therapies, also known as counselling, without seeing a GP by going through a self-referral process. And again, this is actually asking you to think like a professional because you're going to need to fill in the form, but it implies that it should be easy or that other people find it easy. Now, it could be somebody's first time trying to get this help, or they could have tried before and had bad experiences, because actually asking for this kind of help is a big deal. Someone who needs this kind of help is struggling in some way. And for some people, going to a GP and then being told to self-refer actually makes them feel like they've been sent away or put back at the start. So, it'd be nice if it was quick and simple, but it's not. And saying that it isn't going to make it so. And actually, I had a look at some of the self-referral forms from counselling services, and they are really complicated. They're often really time-consuming and stressful to fill in. They're generally designed for health professionals and not patients. They're often got all the questions on one page, which is really overwhelming because you don't get to think about things one step at a time. And a lot of these forms actually have word counts or character counts. So to be honest, at this point, we're talking about a major writing project. You've got to write essays and share loads of personal information. Do we think that's quick and simple? I don't think we do. So as I say, these examples are from transport and health. I'm sure you can think of lots more examples, but I'm going to stop ranting about what it looks like when it's done badly. And we're going to have a think about what you can actually consider and do if you find these words in content that you're working on, or if somebody wants you to use them. So, first thing to think about is it actually quick and simple to do? Really? For every single person who could be using it, regardless of what else is going on for them? And the answer is no. It depends on the person's circumstances. It depends on any barriers they're facing. I'm sure that you will realize this, but it may be the case that there are people you're working with that you sort of need to help them understand this. So it's never entirely within your control how someone feels. It's not the only thing they're doing that day. It's not the only thing affecting their mood. So even if your service is designed for someone who is feeling very relaxed and happy, maybe you work on something that's designed for a happy moment in someone's life. You just never know what else is going on that day or in their life. So you always want to be aware that there will be someone that doesn't find this easy. And you might think, well, okay, but they're in a minority. What if most of my customers or my users are happy? Can't I just say that it's quick and simple? But the thing is, these are also a waste of words. Even if you could be sure it's easy, and you can't, why waste words saying so? Try just taking it out. Or rather try taking it out. So I think it's worth saying that if somebody else wants you to use words like just and simply, you don't necessarily need to convince them of why. You know that these small words can be a big deal, but you might not need to have the conversation with them that we're having now. That might be the wrong battle. You know why it needs to go, and it might be enough to just tell them that they're wasted words and that it reads better without. You might even find that you can delete them and nobody notices. Next thing to consider is can you make it simpler to do? How many steps are involved, and can you remove any of them? So rather than telling people it's simpler, could you make it so it actually is? Now, in government, one of our design principles is do the hard work to make it simple. So I'm just showing a poster at this point, and it says do the difficult, complicated, hard work to make it simple, and difficult and complicated are crossed out. So doing the hard work to make something simple is thinking, well, how can I take out some of the steps that are involved? How can I make this so it really is easy, which is so much better than just telling someone it should be? So to go back to our example from the Trainline, they knew who I was, they knew what train I'd booked, they knew my email address. So they had enough data to send me this email. So they must have known if I had an account because they know which email addresses have Trainline accounts. So in an ideal world, what they would have done is send two separate emails, one for people with an account and one for people without. And for the people without, they would have sent a link to sign up instead of giving this explanation that sounds simple but isn't. Now, you would need a certain amount of internal support to do that. You'd need the resources, you'd need the technical ability to send two different emails. I don't know if they have that, but that would be the ideal thing. The next best solution would have been to make the content a bit clearer and add headings, to have one section for people with an account and one people without. That would have made it a bit more transparent that the email wasn't targeted, but it'd make it easier for the person reading it, because that's what you want to do. You want to make it easier for the user or the customer rather than just making it easier for you as the organization. The next thing you might want to consider is, do you actually mean that it's quick and simple, or do you mean something else? So sometimes when people say just or simply, they mean it's quick, it's easy. There are lots of other things that you might mean. I've got some examples. I expect you can think of more as well. So the first thing you might be thinking of is that there's only one thing to do. And as we've already established, that is almost never true. So what to do instead? Count the steps. Can you remove any? Be clear and straightforward. In the unlikely event that there's only one thing to do, you can probably take out the word just. To give an example, if you're giving directions, you would say turn left. You wouldn't say just turn left. The next thing that you might mean You might mean you can only do this one way. So an example might be if you say, just call us, you might mean that calling us is the only way to get in touch. So what to do instead? First of all, check if that's true. Is this the only one way to do that thing? And then consider if it should be true. In our example of calling people, that shouldn't be the only contact method you provide because not everyone else can use it. And then if you do mean you can only do this one way, you need to say what you mean. So how that might look for self-referral, what you might actually mean, you might mean you can use this service without seeing a doctor first. You might mean you need to fill in this form. You might mean you need to fill in this form yourself. You can ask your doctor to help you. Another thing you might mean is you need to do this straight away. What to do instead, say what you actually mean. So an example is some campaigns for particular medical problems say just call 999. I don't know what they mean. What they might mean call 999 and that's all they need to say. They might mean call 999 right away if that's a problem where there's a particular issue with people not calling 999 when they should. They might mean always call 999. But if you're using the word just, then it's not always clear what you mean and you might mean something else altogether. Something else that you might mean that we saw in our Eurostar example is we are trying to fix problems with content, and what you should do instead is be clear and straightforward. And I've not put this on the slide, but not make the user the problem, not make the customer the problem. So with Eurostar, my issue is it's saying our system is fine. You should just do this because you are the problem. I don't think that's how Eurostar want to come across, but it's how they are coming across because there's no indication that they know there's a problem or that they plan to change anything. So when I've said be clear and straightforward, in an ideal world, their system would accept hyphens. But if you were stuck trying to write some content and you didn't have the ability to fix the technical system, the best thing you could do, ideally, would be to be honest, to say, we're really sorry, our system doesn't currently accept hyphens. We're working to change this. We would appreciate it if you could please use a space. That's not quite the right wording, but that would be the gist, to say, we know it's a problem. We're sorry. Thanks for bearing with us. And something else you might mean is we're trying to reassure you. Oh, just self-refer. It's easy. But if you find something difficult or daunting that's not going to change just because someone else tells you it's easy, or that you should find it easy, or that other people find it easy, and again, what to do instead is to be clear and straightforward. So for self-referral, you could explain how to fill the form in and what to expect. You could encourage people to take their time and design the form in a way that allows for this. You could encourage people to get help filling the form in, for example, from their doctor. You could explain what the process involves and what might happen next. All of that is going to take more work than saying you can just self-refer, but it's going to be much better for the person on the receiving end. And then some other things to consider if you find yourself using these words. Who would find this thing hard and what harm could I cause them? Because saying something is easy could make things worse. If someone's not feeling great about themselves, being told that they should find something easy when it's difficult can be discouraging. It could stop the person feeling able to try. It could make them feel worse about themselves. It can add to somebody's stress. Ask yourself, what assumptions are we making? Are we assuming that some things are true of everyone and what can happen if we're wrong? That might be that everyone finds something easy, that everyone can do something a particular way. It might be that everyone with punctuation in their name is happy to just have a different name. What assumptions are you making? And if you're wrong, what might the consequences be? And what does this say about us? What are you saying about your brand or organization? What harm could that do? Is it going to, for example, mean that next time somebody spends money, they spend it on a rival business? Is it going to mean that somebody's perception of you is worse? I don't think that's what anyone actually wants to achieve. So thank you for listening to me sounding off about why you should just stop saying just, or rather, why you should stop saying just. I would love to hear about your experiences, your questions, and anything that you have to say about this. Thank you so much.